When the fear of staying the same exceeds the fear of the unknown, we take a leap. And that's exactly what it was. So I threw myself into there and started to study and learned a lot about confidence and was ready to apply it. And it was actually surprisingly effective in that it taught me about just kind of behavioral change and approaching women and almost like a template of how to be. This is how an attractive man is, which was better than like hide from women and everybody and hope your life works out. So it was an improvement, but then I discovered that there was another cage, and that's the cage of niceness.
Dr. Aziz has been kind enough to come join us and let us chat with him. And he and I have pretty similar paths in life, at least in terms of the things that we teach. And I've been on his show probably two or three times in the past. So let me just read a really short bio for Dr. Aziz. It said, Dr. Aziz is the world's leading confidence expert. He helps people break free from hesitation, fear, and self-doubt so they can rapidly grow their businesses, become more powerful leaders, and enjoy outstanding relationships. So, Dr. Aziz, welcome. Glad to have you here in front
Thanks,
of,
Robert.
this group of guys, and I know we're going to have a good time. So, wanted to just get us started. The same thing that happens probably in every interview that you do. Tell us a little bit about you. How you came to be directed towards working around things like niceness, like authenticity, like social anxiety, even chronic pain.
Probably not very surprising or unique, but from my own pain, my own challenge. Like I wanted to solve those problems. For many years, though, I didn't even know they were my problems or that they were solvable, which means I just lived in a cage. And I think of it as living within a cage within a cage. So the inner cage, the small cage, was social anxiety. And that's, I got to hide from people. I don't want to approach people. I don't want to date. I don't want to put myself out there. I don't want to raise my hand and be seen and known or acknowledged, anything. I just want to fly under the radar and pretty much avoid most social risk in life. And and with that, what you're trapped in that cage is like your own suffering, your own story about yourself. And that's how it was for me, which is I'm unattractive, I'm undesirable, no one's gonna like me, I'm ugly. And it leads to a very downsized life. And I did that. It started to develop for me when I was about 10 or 11 years old, and it intensified and got more and more restrictive. And then I went off to college when I was about 17, and I spent 4 years there, pretty much just school, work, video games, one friend. So it was a pretty limited life. And then I did have this turning point, this threshold moment where I was going to fire up Warcraft 3, which is a game I played a lot of, and I heard I heard my roommate had a girl over and she was laughing. They were talking and I could hear them just connecting. And there was something about that that was like the breaking point. And it was either like I cannot live my whole life this like I have to do something. I didn't even know what the answers were, but I reached some moment of desperation, which was great. There's a great quote that I heard from Lisa Rankin, who wrote Mind Over Medicine, which is a fantastic book about chronic pain. But she says, when the fear of staying the same exceeds the fear of the unknown, we take a leap. And that's exactly what it was. So I threw myself into there and started to study and learned a lot about confidence and was ready to apply it. And it was actually surprisingly effective in that it taught me about just kind of behavioral change and approaching women and almost like a template of how to be. This is how an attractive man is, which was better than like hide from women and everybody and hope your life works out. So it was an improvement, but then I discovered that there was another cage, and that's the cage of niceness, where I could approach people. I could be more out there in the world, but then I was still playing the role of who do you want me to be? How do you want me to be? And this cage is it's kind of more of a trap because even it's not so confining. And there's so many nice people out there, and I was one of them. It's like You can have friendships, you can have relationships, you can get married, you can do all these things. But then you're playing this role of how everyone you think needs you to be. And it's extremely confining, even though it doesn't appear that way. And so then there was another era of change that I needed to go through. And that's when I came across your book. I was in my maybe late 20s. So I was in the cage of social anxiety for 10 years. Then I was in the cage of niceness for like 7 years, for well, 17 if you count both of them. And then I started to really address it. I came across your book. I joined a men's group and I really and again, I didn't even know. I didn't know why. Okay, I have the confidence to approach a woman. I can actually date her. We can, but as soon as we started getting into a relationship, I was a mess because it flipped into whatever you need me to be. Just panic, codependent mess. And so anyway, I learned and started to practice that. And then along the way in my 20s, I realized, oh, I want to help people. And, and with whatever I've grown through, and that's not stopped. I'm 42 now, and everything that I came across learning about chronic pain, and every time I discover something that's been radically transformative in my life, I will turn around and teach it and share it and try to find systems to help as many people as possible experience that liberation.
Yeah, and again, I can relate to so much of that. I'm the same way. If I struggle with something, I want to understand it, I want to get through it, and then I just have that natural tendency like you. Okay, other people must have this. I'll write about it. I'll teach it. I'll create
Yeah.
a class on it. I'll do a workshop on it. And I really got the sense that so much of what you do in the world came out of your own struggles, your own pain, your own difficulties. Um, and I like how you make that connection between social anxiety and niceness. And probably not all nice guys have social anxiety, but I've heard you say that niceness and social anxiety are emotional cousins. What do you mean by that? That they're emotional cousins?
Yeah, I see them as stemming from the same, they stem from the same root. So here's another metaphor. Emotional cousins, they're branches on the same tree, but uh, the same core root is a perception of yourself as not okay, not desirable, not lovable as you are. And those are just social anxiety and niceness are just two different strategies to try to deal with that fundamental problem, which is actually the
Would you
problem
say
is
that
not,
both are related to toxic shame then? Would
yes,
you
I
make
would
that
say
statement?
so. So the
Okay.
social anxiety approach is, well, I don't want anyone to know me or, I mean, I'm not going to approach that person. I'm not going to say anything because well, how could they like me? So I'll just stay closed in. The nice person is like more proactive. They're like, well, I can talk to them. I just have to make sure that I police myself, that I'm exactly what they want, and then maybe I can have a relationship with them.
So you say that social anxiety is not inherent. It's not biologically rooted for us. Um, and you say it has to do with our thinking. And, the more I've listened to you, the more I realize, with your training and all, you're very much a cognitive behavioral therapist. You create pictures and you say there's $1 million question that you can ask yourself when you're feeling social anxiety. I saw this in an interview. What's that $1 million
Jeez.
question when yeah, isn't that fun when
Uh-oh.
somebody, oh, what
I
did I
might need a
say in
hint.
that
I
other
mean,
interview?
I say a
I
lot of
can
things.
help you. I can help you. I can give you a cue.
I know that
Um,
I did talk about the MVP question in the book, Not Nice, but that might be different than
well,
the $1 million
the
question for
one the
social
one
anxiety.
I heard you in an interview talking about the $1 million question. It begins with pause. You'd say pause, and then what mental movie am I viewing?
Hmm. I like
And
that question.
that was yeah that's yeah I learned that from you, man. I was watching this video, this interview of you, and it was always like whenever you I don't want to go talk to her or people, whenever you'd say pause, what mental movie am I watching right now? And what are those mental movies that a person with social anxiety is actually playing in their head at that
Yes.
time?
Yeah. Yes. So it can come in movies. It can come in essentially it's you generating simulations in your mind. We're constantly predicting what's going to happen. So if when we step into the unknown, if I go talk to this person, could be a dating situation, a social situation, a work situation, what's going to happen? And we'll run a little quick simulation. It might be visual. If you're kind of more of an imagination, there's might be a little mental movie. It might even just be a snapshot image. And the image doesn't, it could be just one picture, but it's loaded with meaning. There's a great Family Guy episode from back in the day when I used to watch that show. And there's a trend going through the town that all the parents are concerned about. And it's toad licking. So, because the whole idea is that certain toads in the Amazon can have psychedelic. I don't know if that's what the actual story behind that is. You probably have to process it in some way. But in this show, they're just like literally picking up a toad and licking it. And there's a teenager that picks up the toad and he licks it, and it shows the world from the teenager's perspective. And everything just like blurs into kind of rainbow psychedelic colors. And he says one thing, which is, whoa, everything's so significant. And I laughed when I saw that because that kind of captures in one sentence psychedelics where just everything feels so significant. But that one image can be loaded with so much significance because what I've discovered is it's not whether it's visual. Sometimes people like are talking it through in their head. They're more auditory, they're more saying things. However, the story, however it comes to you, there is the key word that I've settled on now is there's a perspective that you have of yourself and other people. And that perspective can even be nonverbal. It could just be, this is how it is. And when you have social anxiety or niceness, the perspective of yourself is, I mean, to put it directly, is some version of repulsive,
Hmm.
or at least your desires are repulsive. Your authentic self is repulsive. You're not, you playing your nice person persona is repulsive. And so it's the opposite of attractive. And then what we'll do is we'll predict that. And usually this is very fast, very practiced, very unconscious. But if you bring your attention to it, we can start to see it. And then we say, well, of course I'm not going to go talk to that person because I know how it's going to go. And so that's the mental movie. Is another way of sort of describing what I'm talking about here. And that's the thing that we have to change because if I am certain that my predictions are true or very likely to be true, and then I'm certain that you mentioned as toxic shame, that there's something fundamentally wrong with me, then I'm going to run that pattern indefinitely. Like, why would I change it ever? I'm just being smart at that point. If those are the criteria, if those are true inputs, then I'm being intelligent, but they're not true inputs. That's the good news. And that's why people can experience radical shifts.
Yeah, and then I really like that, that term, the repulsiveness, and that if people see us, they're going to be disgusted by us. They're going to be repulsed by us. And this is operating at such an often unconscious part of our brain. It probably was internalized at a very early age when somebody frowned at us, scowled at us, turned away from us,
Mhm.
was sharp with us. And as children, of course, we always internalize that's about me. I caused that. There's something about me that caused
Yeah.
that response in other people. And so it makes sense if we've internalized a belief, we're going to do two things. We're not going to do anything that will put us in a situation where that might get triggered because who wants to feel like they're repulsive or they're disgusting or you disgust people? And we also tend to go find proof of that being true.
Yeah.
So do you find that we
Yeah.
really
We'll
we
find it.
go hunting for, confirmation bias that
Yeah.
yeah, people find me disgusting, all right.
Yeah. Well, that's a quote that I love from Tony Robbins, which seems to really hold so true. And I mean, I heard this quote, a decade ago or more, and just literally like 2 weeks ago, I was thinking about it and seeing the truth of it, which is the strongest force in the human personality is to remain consistent with their identity. And your identity is just how you see yourself. And so we want, and I've reflected on that a lot. And I think it's because we like certainty in life. We like to know how things are going to go. We like predictability. Generally, we like control, even though we don't have too much of it in the universe. But there's a sense of solidity with that. It's the opposite of that kind of out of control, ungrounded. And we all know that, like, if you get a lot of uncertainty in your life, change, even if it's good, positive change, there can be a little bit of this like floating feeling that feels like I'm not holding on to something.
Yeah.
And the identity is actually the most kind of a very solid thing. Even though it's invisible, people like can identify with their car or their job or whatever, but people are way more locked in with their identity. And so, as bad as it might feel to be like, I'm a disgusting, unlovable person, at least I have something to hold on to. And I find this when we start to let that go, of course, when we imagine the end result, like, wow, I'm way more free and I'm able to talk to people. Yeah. But that in between transition, and I see this all the time with clients, there's this, oh, this is freaky. I don't like it. And there's all kind of, it could use a million cliched metaphors about when animals are raised in cages and then you take them out to the wild and try to let them out. They don't want to get out of the cage. They literally won't, right? Because there's something it's almost in the animal nervous system that wants to remain consistent. So yes, we'll go create that experience. We'll see it when it's not even there.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, how's it going, John? John's like, oh, hey, how's it going? He thinks I suck, right? We'll literally read, or you're sharing at a party, and there's three people listening, and there's one person just looking at you, but they don't say anything, and maybe they didn't smile when you thought you made a joke, and oh, they hate me. Oh, and it is real, because we don't, there's another saying which is perception equals reality in terms of our own experience. So if I perceive you as thinking I'm a loser, I'm going to emotionally, like, that's true in my experience, whether or not that actually is happening. So yes, we'll create it. We'll elicit it from people. And so until we really see what we're talking about, which I'm so glad we're focused on this, until we really get, oh, this isn't a reality. This identity is not really who I am. This is just a perception, and it's and
Well,
it's false.
well, let's segue that into rejection. And I have a lot of stuff I want to ask you that I won't have time. But the rejection, I was watching one video, and you teach it almost exactly the same way I do. I when I was started teaching men how to date, I would tell them rejection doesn't hurt. And I couldn't convince anybody of that. I tried to get
Says
them to
you.
quit using the R word. Just get the word rejection out of your vocabulary. That didn't work either. And then I came on, all right, let's go out and try to get rejected. Let's go find ways, just to approach somebody without being rude. I heard you gave one example where a guy, just said to somebody who was eating their lunch, "Can I have a bite of your sandwich, please?" And they gave him a bite. So the thing that I found, the more I try to go get rejected,
Yeah.
the less success I had at getting rejected. I got a lot more yeses than nos, and I even would push it as far as I could. And I found that to be liberating, and I found a lot of men have seen it that way. So how do you teach that? How do you teach not only you're going to go, do this practice of trying to get rejected, but actually welcoming in and renaming, reframing the no's that we get. Walk us through
Yeah.
that.
This is such a core. So if we were looking at the first thing, focus was like looking at the root. Now we're getting into, well, okay, what do we do? How do we really liberate ourselves? And because people want to change the perception of themselves and they go to the mirror and say, I'm lovable, I'm great, people are going to like me. I consider, uh, I don't consider that those affirmations complete or totally effective in themselves, at least not from my experience or anyone I've ever worked with.
That's my I call them painting over rust.
Yeah, yeah,
The rust is going to come back through all those nice
yes,
little affirmations.
yes. And I'd say the purpose that I found them to be very useful for, though, is as priming, as opening me to a new possibility that I then just go act on. So if I give myself an affirmation of, hey, actually, I have a lot to offer in conversation and people are going to like talking to me. If I follow that up with then going to a social environment and approaching people, now that affirmation has been it unlocked me to go test it out. But we have to go test it out. And this is where rejection comes in. The only way to liberate, and this is where you see like, the B side of the CBT, the behavior side. I'm a huge believer in action, bold action, consistent action, that's how we radically build anything and transform our lives. So, um, and so that's putting ourselves into those situations where it's a risk. I might get rejected. And again, if I get a no and it destroys me, my risk rate is going to go way down. So I need to build my resilience, my tolerance for rejection, and that's enter seeking it out. I love like looking at the word rejection and changing our relationship with it because it's such a loaded word. And so what I make a distinction of is that someone saying no to you or even having disapproval towards you is something that comes towards you and then but actually it's almost like a cell where there's a membrane. It's coming in, and then what do you do with that? Do you take it in? Because the rejection, the reason it's so painful is not because you said no to me. It's because as soon as you say no to me, I turn on myself and I say, they said no because I'm repulsive. I'm awful. All that old identity crap comes back. And so the real thing is to take ownership for the reason rejection is so painful is because there's something I'm doing with it. And if I can eliminate or radically reduce how much I turn on myself, how much I reject myself, I'm not saying it's utterly devoid of emotion if there's someone you're really into ghosts you. Yeah, that's going to be disappointing and sad or painful or frustrating or confusing. So we can have human emotion, we can feel, but it's very different if you're like, man, that sucks. Why didn't she get back to me? I thought we had a great conversation. I'm confused. I'm hurt. That's very different than, oh, I messed up. I'm such an idiot. Why didn't I? Oh, I was too this. Oh, you can feel the self-hatred there. And that's the part that we have to, and what the beauty of this is that's what is in our control. It's like a skill. And I call this skill being on your own side or on my own side or
Mhm.
almost for short. And if we can master this, oof, it opens us up. And so what I like to do with people is teach them some of the basics of how to get on your own side. Then let's go out and test it out. And yeah, let's go practice. Let's go ask questions where we get no's, and usually doing it in kind of almost experiment style environments where you're asking people for silly things removes it from the intensity of asking someone out or having a conversation in your personal life. Like we want to get to there, but let's train in the gym first. And it's like any other form of training. How many reps can we do? And can we get on our own side so we're not blowing ourselves out? And what I've found is within a relatively short period of time, a relatively short number of repetitions, we can really become a lot more courageous through this practice.
I do a short practice in a lot of my workshops where I'll get everybody paired up and person A for 2 minutes has to say to person B, it's two people in the workshop, I want to be happy. I want world peace. I want to make
Mm.
$1 million. Person B has to repeatedly say, no, no, can't have that. Not going to happen.
That's fun.
And I'll do this, and there's a lot of good applications from it. But after I start teaching guys to date, I especially brought it into there because by the time we get done, 2 minutes, they're laughing, they're talking, they're having fun. I can't get them to quit, right?
Mm.
And then we'll come back and talk about the applications. And one of them is you just got told no over and over and over again for 2 minutes, and you were smiling and laughing and having fun. What
Mm.
is the difference between that and if you ask a woman for her phone number and she says no? And it's just like, and it's all just context. It's the
Yes.
story in our head that we put. The being told no doesn't hurt. I go back to that. Rejection doesn't hurt. The stories we tell ourselves based on past experience, and as you said, how our mind works as a predicting machine consistently. Well, I've been told no before. I got told no here. I'll always get told no again in the future, which is all proof of this story that I tell myself.
And that, I think this is the big reveal of the movie, like Inception or something. The big reveal that I discovered after doing this for many years is
I've heard that movie mentioned like 3 times in the last two
I
weeks.
actually didn't like it that much. I just found
I
it
guess I'll have
super
to watch
confusing.
it. Everybody keeps talking about it. So
People say
anyway,
it's amazing. I watched it and I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on. And but I don't, whatever. I'm not a big, unless there's like the reveal is really amazing, I just kind of find them meh. But in any case, um, it's the big reveal is that whole identity and the telling and looking for the proof and the prediction. Oh, a rejection tells me I'm no good. There actually is a part inside of all of us that wants to maintain that story and clings to it for dear life. There's a part that wants to think it's you're unlovable, wants to convince you of that, and I've dubbed this part your safety police, because its whole strategy in life is to keep you living a guarded life. It basically made a decision at some point that said, look, there's too much pain. Maybe you had a painful upbringing. Maybe you had pain in your childhood. It could be from something really severe like abuse. It could also just be unmet needs and not having love and not having it. It's something, no attention or even less. And there's like it's so much pain. There's a part of us that's like, you know what? No, we're not going to experience that. And the way we do that is we close everything down. And so it's constantly looking to interpret stuff that way. So I love that you
It,
mentioned that because
it,
that, and when we get that, it helps because you stop turning to that voice as like your guide in life. It's that's not the person to set as your CEO inside. That's the inner child to like give a hug and say, okay, I'll help you out here. And many people put that version of themselves as their director in life,
yeah.
and it leads
It,
to a very limited experience.
it keeps us safe and behind those bars that you
Yeah.
mentioned.
Yeah. Great questions. I would agree. I don't think hey, the past is the past, just move on. I think that can be a lot of suppression, right? Imagine someone's child dies. Hey, that's the past, move on. It's like, whoa, this feels awful, right? So, same thing, significant loss in our lives or divorce or end of relationship can be very painful and confusing. So, I think we need to process it on a few levels. One is the emotional level. We just got to feel what we feel. And what we feel is going to be mixed. It's going to be maybe not taking ownership. It's just blaming or hurt or angry. And I think there is a space. Sometimes people are like, oh, I shouldn't. I should only never blame and only take ownership. Well, yeah, fine. You don't have to go throw a brick through their window, but when you're at home by yourself, like listen to the part of you, it's like, ow, or fuck you, or just really let yourself experience that, possibly with the support of someone who can do that with you, close friend, therapist, someone where you can really just let yourself feel all the different parts of you. Then we want to also though process it on a learning level, which is yeah, okay. And maybe we have to process some of the emotion first. Like, what happened? Uh, what signs did I see? What did I do to contribute to this? What would I want to do differently in the future? And I don't know if we do that on day one. Maybe we just got to roll around in it for a while because and then we do that. And then when do we get to like where I'm over it? Well, I would say uh, we'll know because there's this willingness to start risking again. Right? If you imagine some risk and it's like, ow, and I can't be in this moment without overlaying a bunch of like, oh, women are gonna hurt me, ow. It's like, okay, let's tend to that a little more. And then you'll know, and then we can move forward. Now, is it gone forever? I think that's a fantasy. I think those pain points are always accessible, and we just get better and better at when it comes up, we're like, okay, I'll be with that for a few, a little bit of time, and then I can move on. I think most importantly is finding what works for you because sometimes there's, oh, this is the way to do it and everyone should do it. So for some people, it's like meditation, there's a lot of momentum in that and a lot of spread of that. So it's like meditation is the way to do that. It may or may not be for you. And so I encourage people to test different things out and then find what it is. And my motto is whatever it takes, whatever works. So it doesn't have to look a certain way. So, but mindfulness meditation is there's a lot of research on that to be very effective. And there's a million things and places and apps that teach that and free
Yeah.
YouTube videos about that. So if someone's not familiar with that, just look up mindfulness meditation. John Kabat-Zinn is a fantastic teacher of that. I learned from him, and mindfulness-based stress reduction is his approach. But that's a great one. MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction. So I look into that. And though, if you try that and you're like, I'm crawling out of my skin, dude, you don't have to force that one. Another one that's really effective is literally just going for a walk. I also like to run or do an elliptical or something. So some sort of cardio exercise is also very effective. I know these are not like mind blowing, but they work. And it's like at the end of the day, if we've exercised or we've moved outside, even better, we're gonna feel better. Another one that I'm actually a really big fan of is some sort of breath work. And there's a whole range of that. For some people, they do like an hour of heavy breathing. That's really intense for me. I'm a big fan of like the Wim Hof technique is really simple and easy to teach. And you can just look up Wim Hof on YouTube, and it's like basically 30 deep breaths and then a breath hold. And I find doing, and he recommends 3 rounds in a row, but even just 1 round of that is really good, I found for me, for regulating the nervous system. Box breathing is another breathing technique that's pretty commonly known and very helpful, where it's just you breathe into a count of five, hold for a count of five, breathe out for a count of five, and hold for a count of five when you're exhaled. And that one's beautiful because, the Wim Hof, you're like huffing and puffing. You're not doing that while you're driving. But the box breathing you can do while you're driving, you could do while you're stretching, you could do while you're listening to somebody. And then finally, I found stretching for me with no inputs and like not listening to a podcast, just in silence, to be very meditative and helpful.